What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the second and final installment for What If Deku Had Spatial Magic. Now, I know after hearing that, many of you guys are like, Zether got lazy again and he doesn't want to finish the story. What is going on? But hear me out. There is a genuine reason for why this series ends so fast, and you're going to be hearing more on that while the video goes on. So if you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to go down below, smash the like button, and also check out the sponsor of the channel. Anyways, let's get into it. Bye.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
But it looks like we weren't invited. Immediately after this, Kurogiri would proceed to summon all of the remaining villains that would arrive in the USJ. And as soon as Izuku sees this, he would decide that he has to do something about it, opening a portal underneath himself before then jumping into it and appearing above Kurogiri. He comes down and actually tries to hit Kurogiri with a punch, but it just goes right through. It's as if Kurogiri's body isn't solid at all. He goes to the ground and realizes he's about to fall, so he opens a portal underneath himself once more and then lands right next to Bakugo, who at this point would blast off into the sky and shoot a full power explosion at the direction of Kurogiri's metal piece, the only part that's tangible about him. Following this, Bakugo holds him down for a second before then Deku looks at him and says, "That's perfect." And from here, Izuku proceeds to pretty much open a portal directly to that of the heroes, with it then following taking only about 1 minute for all of the heroes to be gathered in one location, for Deku to create a portal large enough for all of them to go through, with all of the heroes that would have arrived in canon about 10 minutes later arriving right on time. Izuku doing this would pretty much become the MVP of the USJ, and with this assistance from the heroes, there would be zero incidents, and nobody even got teleported to different locations because Kurogiri didn't have the time. The heroes were far too prepared for this with the inclusion of Izuku with a portal quirk, so things are not exactly going to be going the way that the villains would have expected things to. Instead, Izuku was the one in tangent that they didn't think for. And so, the villains were all taken care of, and all thusly locked in Tartarus. Keep in mind, Bakugo was holding Kurogiri down. He could not teleport them away. So the villains were all promptly taken to prison, and even the Nomu was defeated by that of All Might and the help from a couple extra pro heroes who were there to back All Might up. As soon as everything was over, all of the students would promptly be given about 1 week off of school, and when they returned, they would be informed of the UA Sports Festival by Aizawa. He would also end up giving Izuku an award for Best Acting Hero in that situation. And Izuku would smile at this. Aizawa would inform him that he's going to be giving a speech at the UA Sports Festival and to be ready, and Izuku would honestly be like, okay, that is a little worrying. But regardless though, he decides, oh, whatever, I'll do whatever I have to do then. And so about another week goes by, right? And during this week, Izuku would really not be up to much. You know, he's excuse me, sorry. Oh my god. I got caught off guard. Anyways, so yeah, Izuku at this point, like I said, was not doing much and just kind of was getting himself ready in terms of the speech for the UA Sports Festival. Eventually the day comes and Izuku would be sporting his, his outfit like everybody else. He goes to the top with Midnight introducing him, and Izuku then proceeds to say that this victory is going to be for all the pretty ladies out in the stands. And all the girls would have like mixed reactions. Some of them like smile at this, some of them are like, oh, this weirdo. And Izuku just laughs as he then proceeds to tell everybody, no, but seriously though, everybody here in the stadium, yada yada yada. He hypes everybody up, and thusly Deku gets voted fan favorite by everybody because he didn't give some awful speech like Bakugo saying, I'm gonna win. Instead, he said a perfect thing. Like, I mean, he could not have said anything better in that situation. And Izuku, I mean, he outdid himself really. Following this, Midnight would announce the first event of the US Sports Festival, and that would be the race. Now, unfortunately, I wish I could tell you guys that this was some hard-fought battle, but with the fact that Deku has a portal quirk being a thing, Izuku kind of just jumps through the portal as soon as the starting pistol is blown, getting there and breaking the record for fastest time ever. Everybody in the stands would be like, I mean, that's one way to do it. And Izuku would just be doing his thing, you know what I mean? Like, Izuku at this point is up in the air, you know, he's enjoying his time and nobody can touch him. Izuku got the 100 million point headband and now everybody is gunning for him. However, Izuku's team, it would still be comprised of that of Tokiyami, Uraraka, and Mei Hatsume because she wants to show off her babies. Actually, let me change one of those characters. I'm going to be taking out Mei Hatsume. She's not really that useful to them. Well, oh my god. No, I'm going to be taking out Tokiyami and replacing him with Bakugo, who is going to be at the top. And Izuku is going to be helping them take a bunch of headbands by simply opening portals near the opponent's heads. And opening a portal for Bakugo to stick his hand in and grab all of the headbands. This would lead to an unprecedented win with the heroes, or Izuku's team, over everybody else, because Izuku ended up stealing the headbands of everybody so fast that nobody could have even reacted. This leads to everybody being like, this is the first time this has ever happened. I mean, you guys can feel free to just take the headbands back. But Izuku says that's not happening. And he then proceeds to open portals underneath everybody and drop them as high as they are from the sky, saying, you either give up or we win. And everybody's like, okay, we give up. Or most people give up. And Izuku catches them all with the portal, letting them fall down onto the ground safely so that nobody was actually injured. Following this, we have battles. And the first battle would actually be between Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya, with the other being Uraraka versus Mei Hatsume. She utterly embarrasses Uraraka, but she ends up winning after all, and Izuku and Bakugo ends up going down super similar to how their usual spars happen. Immediately, Bakugo rushes into Izuku and begins trying to use his explosion ability, but every time that Bakugo goes to throw a punch, Izuku creates a portal, and the portal would appear right beside Bakugo's face, and it's trying to make Bakugo hit himself, but he knows this attacks all too well, so he doesn't end up shooting the explosions and pulls his hits back, so he's not able to fully hit himself. That said, Izuku already accounted for this, and thinking to himself that the easiest way to win this is to simply make Bakugo go out of bounds, he opens a portal underneath Bakugo that he falls into and appears out of bounds, making Izuku the winner of the first round. And the finale comes up, because keep in mind, everybody had to either give up or they were going to die. My man Izuku opened a portal like 5,000 meters in the air. They were going to die. Everybody had to quit or it was GG on their lives. You know what I mean? That said, Izuku versus Uraraka would finally go up, and when Izuku looks at her, he just says, I'm sorry about this. And Uraraka knows exactly what's coming. Before she realizes it, she goes, ah! And she falls out of bounds, with Izuku being crowned the winner, and everybody thinking that this was kind of a, wacky UA Sports Festival. I mean, Izuku's quirk was pretty much built for each and every single one of these events, and it was completely unfair the way that everything was laid out. Izuku would be crowned the winner, and he would end up getting a ton of hero offers from different agencies, which would be kind of a good thing, but all in all, Izuku would end up deciding that he's going to be interning with the agency of... drumroll please. I don't know. Alright, simply put, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I genuinely don't know. He's not going to be going with Gran Torino because A, he's just not going to. He doesn't have one for all, sorry. And instead, Mirio is the one who actually got the quirk in this version because he never met Izuku. So Mirio ended up getting the quirk at the end of the day. That leads to Ida, who is still angered at Stain going out and getting killed. Izuku honestly doesn't know what hero agency he goes to, but seeing as regardless of what hero agency he does end up going to, there's not going to be any imminent threat, I genuinely see no purpose in covering this arc. So we're going to breeze by it, saying that Izuku got a little bit of learning experience. However, once they found out about Ida's death, the internships were canceled, and UA was put under a strict watch list by the government themselves, saying that their funding is going to be cut if they let something like this happen once more. They already had to deal with heroes, and while nobody was hurt whatsoever, this is something that was definitely going to tarnish UA's name. The Ida family would actually end up vouching for UA, saying that Ida was actually in searching for Stain, and that the reason that he went over there was because of that. But at the end of the day, the UA school commission would have ended up deciding that they allowed him to get near Stain, and so they should be the ones to pay the price for it. So funding for UA slightly got cut back a lot, and UA received a ton of backlash, with a lot of the heroes actually having some doubts about remaining in the UA high school track. But ultimately, all of them would end up staying, trying to be strong for Ida, because that's what they would have wanted. Izuku would actually end up taking over Ida's spot in command, and what would end up happening from here is essentially the heroes are just enjoying their time. All in all, they are. After all, I mean, they had about 1 month of being unsure if the school was going to be remaining, but once they returned, they were happy to hear that now they were going to get to go to the forest training arc after taking their finals. And honestly, Izuku studies pretty well, you know what I mean? Like, Izuku is pretty smart, so he ends up passing his final. When it comes to the teacher that he's actually going to be having to fight against, I think that a good opponent for him would be that one guy that can create a bunch of clones of himself. And his teammate is going to be... Who should his teammate be? Sato, because I don't know, why not? Okay? His teammate Sato, and Izuku decides that, this is going to not exactly be the easiest battle that he's ever had to face. Izuku has been working on one thing, however, which is opening tons and tons and tons of portals. And while the hero would try to pretty much begin to create a bunch of copies of himself, we see Sato eating a bunch of sugar and rushing in trying to hit them all. This approach doesn't work, however, it does buy Izuku more than enough time to open tons of portals underneath these copies, which leads to him putting them in a state of kind of repeating going through a portal. He puts one under them and one over them, meaning that no matter what they do, they just fall into this endless void of portals. And eventually, the hero would end up giving up due to the fact that this was like torture. So by the time that he finally was dropped at the end, he was in a bad state. His stomach was upside down, and my man proceeded to all over the place, because that's just a face I wouldn't wish on anybody. But that said, what ends up happening from here is essentially the heroes just kind of do their thing. I mean, there's nothing too special that really happens after this point. All the heroes just end up doing their own things, and eventually the forest training arc goes down. I would love to tell you guys that, oh my god, like, the villains actually end up attacking this time, but they don't. And one basic reason for this being because the heroes don't. I mean, Shigaraki and Kurogiri are gone, obviously. And the Stain situation never ended up happening, meaning we don't get the inclusion of Dabi, we don't get the inclusion of Toga, Spinner, or any of the other people who ended up joining the League of Villains afterwards. Instead, what ends up happening is a full-scale attack on Tartarus. However, due to the fact that Izuku has a portal quirk and would have actually visited Tartarus one time when he was a little kid, because, he's really interested in heroes, I believe he definitely would have done this at least once or twice. He ends up being informed by this from Nezu, and once Nezu informs Izuku of this, seeing as now all of them are in a dormitory system, Izuku is able to gather up all the heroes and teleport them straight to that location, leading to a battle between All Might and All for One that happened so different to what they got in the original. Instead of what ended up happening normally, where All for One ends up fighting All Might and Kamino, what ends up happening this time is they fight right at Tartarus, causing a bunch of inmates to actually have their cells broken, and a bunch of villains end up pretty much getting into the ensued battle. A bunch of UA students would actually end up getting involved once they see that the hero side is starting to lose, and Izuku would actually begin portaling around to different hero agencies, grabbing as many heroes as they could possibly get, leading to the eventual win over the heroes and the villains. Because not only is Izuku able to actually grab a bunch of heroes from different agencies, he actually gets a bunch of heroes in training from different areas of UA, ranging from 1A to 2B to 2A to 2, I don't know, 3 something. Basically all the classes of UA. So the heroes pretty much ended up outclassing or like outnumbering the villains. Yeah, that's the word that I was looking for. Outnumbering the villains, leading to the villains losing, thus being put back in Tartarus, and more villains actually being put in there because All For One was there to launch a full-scale attack to break them all out. With the League of Villains main leader being taken out, the only villain that we really have left in the series now is Overhaul. So following these events, we all know what happens after this. They have the provisional hero license stuff, and this isn't really nothing that happens in terms of conflict. We all know that all the heroes are eventually going to get their pro hero licenses, so I see no real reason to change this event, except for when they all get ambushed by a bunch of, the red balls that they get thrown at them, and by them I mean Class 1A, Izuku's actually able to open portals and shoot them back at all of them, so that all the people that try to ambush them actually are the ones that ended up ambushing themselves. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I genuinely believe that that would be a good way to do things. And I know it sounds like a huge stretch. All the events that have happened so far, they sound like a huge stretch, but think about it. Izuku is honestly one of the greatest assistance heroes you could ever have. Finral doesn't have the personality of him wanting to be the greatest hero of the world. He more has a personality of wanting to help people and having friends. He's more in terms of like genuinely wanting Bakugo to be the best hero, and Izuku be the number 2, being more of a supporting one. Izuku ends up gathering, after he graduates and defeats Overhaul, I think that something that would be realistically possible in his area would be amassing a huge agency that has a bunch of talent, a bunch of quirks, and a bunch of different things that Izuku could pretty much do. So whenever there's a crime, Izuku just opens portals to different parts of Japan, and he would obviously scout these areas via helicopter, so he's able to open portals to wherever, whenever he wants, if that makes sense. That said, what ends up happening from here is, like I said, everybody takes their provisional hero license exams, and all of the heroes end up passing, just like many of you guys would expect. Seeing as we're basing this portal quirk off of, or not quirk, but portal magic off of, Finral himself, we had to give Izuku a little bit of personality. So, what happens here? Oh yeah, the big 3 introduce themselves, and this is where the Overhaul arc begins. I still see Izuku going with Mirio due to impressing him when it comes to the battle area. See, when Mirio jumps back up to try to uppercut him or poke him in the eye, Izuku creates a portal right in front of Mirio's punch, and Mirio, never seeing something like this before, immediately just punches himself straight in the gut full force, as hard as he was about to punch Izuku, knocking the wind out of himself. And when he tries to permeate into the ground, he pretty much goes into space, and that's because he permeates. I don't know how to explain this, but he's not tangible to the point where he goes to the floor. But you can't just go through space, a portal that is created through spatial magic nonetheless. So when Mirio goes through this spatial magic, he actually ends up going through the portal, coming out a different spot, but since he's still phasing, he just phases through the ground and immediately pops back up faster than Izuku could react, sending a gut punch straight towards Izuku, sending him hurling to the ground, with Izuku being decently happy with the results, saying that he definitely needs more experience, and Mirio saying that he's a great hero overall. He would love to have an internship with him, with Tsunade. Izuku hearing this would be extremely ecstatic, thinking to himself that going with you? I mean, sure, yeah, that sounds awesome. Mirio says to himself, great, well then I guess I'll see you there. And from here, Izuku goes to the internship with Overhaul. Keep in mind, Mirio has one for all, so if he really wanted to, he could have activated that to like 40% and absolutely demolished this man Deku with the punch. That would have GG'd the series, but he's a hero, keep that in mind. That said though, what ends up happening from here is Izuku visits the agency that Nide is a part of, and Nide, knowing that Izuku has a portal quirk and is able to pretty much like stick his hand through and react to stuff, he realizes that Izuku would end up ultimately failing because of him being able to see the future. But just because of the fact that he actually has a really promising quirk, and the fact that Mirio's vouching for him, and this time he doesn't even have one for all, Tsunade is more than a little willing to actually help this kid out. So eventually the day comes where he and Izuku would actually end up, or not he and Izuku, but Mirio and Izuku end up doing a bit of a patrol. And this time when Eri comes out, I'd like to think that Mirio, seeing a helpless, defenseless girl trying to run away from the villain they've been trying to catch, would immediately act as he should have in the original, activating 40% full cowling and blitzing Overhaul before he even had the chance to see what was coming, phasing through the ground and coming in with a full power 40% uppercut that almost sends Overhaul's head flying off of his shoulders by how powerful this attack genuinely was. And that's what ends up happening. After this, like I said, we really have no villains, and following these events, we simply just have Eri trying to be, made feel good by the rest of the classroom, Izuku continuing his journey at 1A, but following this, there's no conflict, there is no Overhaul, there is no League of Villains, and the Liberation Army is something that Hawks at this moment I'm pretty sure is working on. So Izuku doesn't even get involved with that of the Liberation Army, and even in the original would have never gotten involved until he became a full-fledged hero. So this kind of ends up being the conclusion to the story of what if Deku had a portal quirk, or what if Deku had spatial magic. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did at any point enjoy this series, go back to part 1 and like the video up to help it do well in the algorithm, as well as, you could potentially help out the channel by clicking on the movie version of this and liking the video. Maybe dropping a comment, maybe just let a couple of my videos play through for some crispy watch time. No, I'm kidding. I'm basically farming off reviews at that point. But seriously though, if you enjoyed any part of this, make sure to go down below, slap that like button, turn on post notifications, because very soon I'm going to be dropping a banger Naruto with it for those of you asking. That said, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.